The day I was arrested, I was laying in my bed, asleep. It was the early morning hours. I awakened to
policemen were SWAT running up the steps.
Dressed in tactical gear.
They kicked his door in, and a few minutes later, they brought him out in handcuffs with his shirt thrown over his shoulder.
I had no idea what I was being arrested for, so it was something that was mind-boggling to me. It wasn't until I was in there held and questioned about, the deceased murder, in which I learned that I was a suspect.
When he called me, he said, "Mom, they charging me with the murder of Mr. Keal," and I said, "You're lying."
She was able to observe the incident only for a few seconds from a second-floor window that was partially obstructed, 2:30 in the morning. It was dark out.
The real question is, how is the lineup going to be administered, the photo array going to be administered? There are any manner of verbal and nonverbal cues that can deliberately or inadvertently reinforce the decision of the witness. So even something as simple as saying "good" when I point to photo number 3 can serve as a confirmation to me as the witness that I've made the right choice.
Sequential showing of photographs is a fairer method than having somebody look at 6 or 8 photographs and compare and say, well, maybe this person looks most like it. If you do it sequentially, we get away from that kind of comparison, which is not a very reliable method.
To hear someone say that I've done something and be emphatic that it was me, it was extremely something that angered me.
We have a tendency as human beings and as jurors to view it as very compelling when somebody says, "I was there and I saw it with my own eyes."
While the jury was deliberating, they came back to the judge and said, "We can't decide this case." And remember, this was a case that was what we call death qualified. This was a capital case when it started. The judge gave them an instruction to keep trying. This was a jury itself that had its doubts.
I was not guilty of the crime, so I could never imagine that I would be convicted of something I didn't do.
I was devastated. I remember walking out that courtroom in tears because I could not believe that they found my son guilty of a crime that he did not commit.
Spending my younger years in prison was very difficult. I grew up in prison, that's what I like to say.
The first 2 years was hard. It was really hard to accept the fact that my son could spend the rest of his life in jail for a crime that he didn't do. I would go out up there periodically, but we always written and he always called collect.
Immediately following my conviction, the first things I do to advocate and try to, you know, free myself is I informed my attorney, who was still present, to file an appeal on my behalf.
He would send me letters, tell me to call, say, Mom, can you check this out?
When I would get these denials, I would feel as though I would want to give up. I would feel as though that no one would never listen. I would never get any relief from the court. But nevertheless, this feeling of wanting to give up never lasts long.
And I remember getting this one letter. It was from Lance telling me to send Gene this letter, that there's a possibility that Rolex was willing to talk.
The Pennsylvania Innocence Project got involved in my case. From the very first visit that I actually got from the staff attorney, Charlotte Whitmore, I felt extremely comfortable.
So staff attorney Charlotte Whitmore and I went to SCI Frackville and sat down and spoke with Rolex. We spent 2 to 3 hours with him talking about the day, talking about what he did prior to going to North Philadelphia. He and Tiz were friends with Rob Felder. Rob Felder is the oldest of 3 brothers between Rob, Lance Felder, and Kenyatta Felder. And the Felder family grew up in the same neighborhood as Eugene Gilyard. Tiz and Rolex went to North Philadelphia to meet up with Rob and waited for Mr. Keal to leave his bar, approached him, demanded that he give them money. Mr. Keal would not, and that's when they subsequently shot him twice, once in the knee and then once in the head. Everything could be corroborated was.
Kenyatta Felder is Lance Felder's younger brother. So after we had gotten some publicity on Eugene's case that he was going to have an evidentiary hearing, and this was through a city paper article that ran in the springtime, Kenyatta saw that article, and then he realized that his brother had a chance to be able to get the same level of representation that Eugene was getting. They had no parents. The parents were gone. Rob was now left to raise Lance and Kenyatta. When Kenyatta testified at the hearing for his brother and Eugene, I have to say, I think it was one of the most emotional testimonies I've ever seen. And as he put it, I had to free one brother, but risk the other. The Philadelphia Police Department is reforming the way that they run eyewitness identification procedures, and it's done. So the pictures will now be shown one at a time instead of all at a time. And the benefit of that is that the witness isn't looking kind of to almost to do a multiple choice test, but really the picture that's being shown, the scientists who've studied this show that they're really comparing that picture to the memory of their event.
The double blind means that neither the person administering the lineup nor the person taking the lineup, the witness, actually knows whether or not the suspect is even in the lineup at all, let alone which photo is the suspect.
Well, I'm looking forward to positive things. I'm working right now. I'm waiting, expecting my first biological child. I'm anticipating this. I can't wait. I'm extremely happy for that day to meet this baby. So I'm just looking for positive things, taking things one step at a time, and just seeing where life takes me. I do not believe that I'm the only person who was wrongly convicted. I believe there are still other individuals who are wrongly convicted, who's possibly serving life sentences or even lengthy sentences for crimes they had nothing to do with. And I think that, it need to be things that need to be revised, and there need to be measures taken to avoid such injustices from occurring again, such as what happened to me.
There are a couple of things that members of the public could do to help address this. The first is that they can educate themselves about the strengths and weaknesses of different kinds of evidence so that if and when they sit on a jury, they can be a thoughtful voice in interpreting the evidence that's provided. Another way that they can do it is by voting for prosecutors, for district attorneys and other elected officials who support the use of best practices in the system. And then I guess the third thing is they can do so by communicating that to everybody around them so that the community as a whole recognizes that we have to hold the criminal justice system accountable, that the system's only as legitimate as it is accurate, and that if we don't embrace best practices to ensure that we're not putting the wrong people in jail, the system will lose its legitimacy.
It's heartbreaking for a loved one to be taken away from your family and convicted of a crime that they did not do. So me telling my story, if I can like try to help somebody that, so they won't have to go through, I mean, the pain that I went through, you know, sitting in court, hearing that verdict, guilty, seeing my son going out there in handcuffs, going up to prison, visiting them, I was appreciate for the hours that we spent. But when it was time to leave, I would always tell myself, even though it was a long period of time, that I would be okay at one point or another. But I couldn't get no acceptance. It was no acceptance that I couldn't do, because that was saying this is where he's going to be. And I had faith that it was a possibility that my son was going to come out of this. So if I can help anybody not go through the pain that I went through, more or less the pain that he went through and what he was subjected to for 16 years, what it took from him to have his life taken away from him like that for something he didn't do, I don't have a problem speaking of how I felt and what I went through.